Well, what's up, everybody? Today, we're going to be talking about how to get out of your head, which I know is a problem for so many of you guys. Let's dive right in. Welcome to the Powerhouse Podcast, hosted by sisters, former Miss Nebraskas and a Miss Nebraska USA, and expert coaches Allie Swanson Mancuso and Megan Swanson Rhodes. Every Tuesday, we bring you a life-changing, challenging, and activating episode to help high-achieving women win their pageants, massively transform their mindsets, and dominate all aspects of life, including elements both inside and what most consider traditionally as areas outside of pageantry. Allie and Megan coach high-achieving women in all 50 states and beyond, and live to see women conquer their dreams. If you're not already part of our Powerhouse Club, join the fastest-growing group of winning pageant queens on the planet, linked in the show notes every single week. Now, let's get on to this week's episode. All right, welcome to this episode, Getting Out of Your Head. So, how many of y'all know that being in your head before a athletic competition, before a pageant, before a big pitch, before an interview, before a date can be something that feels absolutely impossible to get out of? Let me tell you, if you have been around the podcast for a while, or maybe for some reason you're brand new, which welcome if you're brand new, I'm Megan Rhodes, your host. How many of you guys know that it can be debilitating when you feel like you need your brain to work for you and it decides to work utterly against you in the moment? It is not fun. And sometimes, you go into a panic. I've experienced panic attacks in my life at some very unseemly, or not unseemly, not the right moment, right? Like not convenient times at all. And yet sometimes it can completely take over. Okay. So today I want to help you guys with what you can do to help with that fight or flight response, and what you can do to actually work before the moment that it matters most to be able to unwind those thoughts, slow things down, and actually process so that you can get back on track. Okay. Some of these are things that I've researched, and then I'm also just going to share with you guys some things that have really worked for me over time, because I like to be 100% honest around here. So taking you a little bit of backstory. Okay. So, for a really long time, I had never really experienced cognizantly anxiety until in a few years back, when I was in a really abusive environment in a stressful environment and a manipulative environment for the course of 2 or 3 years. And I finally went to counseling. I finally, talked to some other people that were outside the situation. And I realized, oh my gosh, you basically have PTSD and you have anxiety issues. And it was so freeing because on one side of things, I felt validated. I felt not crazy for the first time. But how many of you guys know it didn't necessarily help my performance anxiety? It didn't help and really for me, actually, it wasn't actually performance anxiety. Actually, for me, I perform really well over pressure. I think that's just being raised on stage and being raised in a musical household and things like that. But actually, for me, it was when life stopped. Is that anybody? For me, it was when life stopped, when I actually didn't have noise. I didn't have something to distract myself with, that actually made it incredibly terrible. Okay. And so number one today, and am I going to lose track of these numbers? Of course, y'all know I can't count. When I don't have things written down and I'm freely just speaking, I'll say number 3, 5 times. So just go with me here. The first point that I will be talking about today is actually analyze when and where are you feeling like you're getting out of your head, because it may be in super stressful environments, but it also may be in times of quiet. And you actually need strategies for both. So for me, when I have, if I plan a full day off, it is actually really hard for me to sit still. So one of the things that my therapist actually really helped me with is she helped me to find active strategies for rest. And for me, I'll do a puzzle, or some people do knitting, or I go for walks a lot. I'm actually going to go for a walk right after this. And I found cathartic ways to get out of my head by still focusing my attention on something. You could do a Rubik's Cube. You could do 10 jumping jacks. You could do deep breathing, a lot of things that many of you guys already know. But first, I wanted to kind of like break the glass ceiling in a way for you guys, break the stereotype ceiling, if you will, that it's not just moments when you're on stage ready to perform. It actually can be rest as well. Rest can be really scary for people. So many of us as high achievers find our worth in our accomplishments that actually when life slows down, we start to question our worth. We start to question our identity. We start to question why we're worthy or why we deserve a place in the room. And I'm guilty of this. One of the episodes that you guys can listen to on the Sales Queen podcast is from Christy Bulwer, and she has a brand new book out that is called Nervous Breakthrough. And I probably reference that book once a week, even to this day, because I'm working through that. I'm in a very, my life is probably what some people would consider high stress, but it's not high stress to me. It's just normal. Can I get an amen? And, can we just be real? Like for us as high achievers, I'm like, but I don't want anything else. Like I chose this life. This life kind of chose me straight out the womb, right? And we're just kind of wired this way. So I go with it. But that's something that is a double-edged sword. So it makes us really high achieving. It makes us, people who are very highly intelligent. We work super hard. But on the other side of things, we also don't know how to relax. And we don't know how to give ourselves grace when we don't feel like we're contributing enough, right? And that word enough is usually packed with shame or guilt or condemnation or self-criticism. So the first thing that I wanted to talk about in this episode was actually, like I said, that double-edged sword and making sure that we have strategies for rest and making sure we know how to give ourselves mercy and grace and understanding and compassion. We're so often compassionate with other people, but really terrible at being compassionate for ourselves and to ourselves. I'm preaching to myself right now. Can we just get real? Okay. So that's the first half of this, okay? Now, before we get into the second section, since if you're watching this on the Powerhouse Podcast, then we're going to be taking a break for the summer after the next episode, which is the 200th episode, which is so exciting. And if you're watching this on the Sales Queen Podcast, then you might be a little bit of a different audience. So I want to actually give an invitation to all of you guys before we go into more of the how do I get out of my head in the more stressful, I'm on stage, I'm in an interview, I'm on a date, those kinds of active places, okay? And I want to send an invitation to each and every one of you, if you are not already, to join our Sales Queen Facebook group, okay? And if you're already in our group, but you want to make sure you're just on every list to get every freebie, then why don't you go ahead and send me a DM on Instagram that says podcast, and I'll send some fun things your way. But our Sales Queen Facebook group is an amazing community of Christian women that are pursuing their purpose, their call, and their destiny, and they're looking to make eventually 6 or 7 figures, part-time or full-time, for their future and their families. The reason why I'm bringing this up, even if you're watching this on the Powerhouse Podcast, is, I've been coaching a lot of you guys for a super long time, even virtually through this podcast. So one, I want to make sure that you're watching or listening to the Sales Queen Podcast as well. So just go to my social media to find that, or search Sales Queen Podcast everywhere where you can find podcasts, because with a lot of you pageant women that I've been advising for, could be 8 years, a lot of you are exiting the pageant phase of your life and are now moving into the true adulthood, career, marriage, dating world, all these different things, okay? And the Sales Queen Podcast, as well as the Sales Queen Facebook group, we talk a lot about faith, business, marriage, relationships, your personal life. Really consider it the extension of, okay, I'm done with pageants. Now what do I do? Am I an entrepreneur? Am I not an entrepreneur? But what the heck do I do with this next phase of my life, my leadership, my purpose? And we have a ton of different resources, even outside of any of my offerings. I have a ton of different directions. I have a ton of different streams of income that I can point you to. And I am on a mission to help 10,000 women produce over $100,000 in their lifetime, okay? Hopefully in a year. And then my goal is to help 100 people, that's my first goal, create $1 million businesses, okay? And I want to do that in the next 10 years, which I know I'm going to smash, okay? So if this is calling to you at all, this is not even meant to be a pitch. Everything in there is free. Okay. So make sure that you are listening to the Sales Queen podcast. It's going to help you in that next step after pageants. And if you're already listening to this on the Sales Queen podcast, then make sure that you're a part of our Sales Queen group. Okay. All of those links will be in the show notes to make sure that you guys can take those next steps. Otherwise, just DM at Megan Swanson Rhodes the word podcast, or just find Sales Queen podcast on Instagram, and we'll be able to help you take a next step. Like I said, I am on a mission, and nothing would make me happier. My husband and I actually just got off a call with a couple that we're mentoring right before this, that we're going to be helping them in their coaching businesses. And just, this is what we eat and breathe every single day. Why did my husband and I start CYP, Christian Young Professionals, which, if you want, talk about a low budget membership, if you want great godly Christian community in your professional life, you just want to be poured into from Landon and I for like dirt cheap, it's $27 a month to join that online membership. So message me for that too. If you know that that's supposed to be you, we'll disciple you. We have a call once a month that you can tap into, and $27 a month is literally less than $1 a day. Okay. So start investing in yourself if you want the keys to not only getting out of your head, like we talked about, like we're talking about today, but also just taking that next step, or maybe even asking God or praying about, what happens after I finish this pageant? What happens after I finish this season? Maybe you're ending school right now. Maybe you're just exiting more of a spiritual or a mental emotional season. It's always good to have mentorship and people pouring into you, spiritually, physically, financially, mentally, emotionally, relationally, that align with your values so that you can get to that next step. Okay. Anyways, so back to the show. That is my announcement. Thank you very much. Can't wait to coach you in some capacity. All right. Okay. So next we have the portion of, okay, I'm stepping on a stage, I'm doing an interview, I'm on a sales call, I'm on a pageant. What am I doing? How do I get out of my head? Okay. So here's what has worked for me. So number one, and I think I've said this on a podcast before, but it's so true, and I want to take you guys back to the basics because it works. You have to slow down and scope out. What does that mean? Anybody know what that means? Okay. Slow down. Why do we do this? Because how many of you guys know, and anybody who's dealt with anxiety, I'm waving my own hand right now, can attest to this. When you are anxious or in that fight or flight, or you're what people call triggered, your brain is moving at 9 million miles an hour. So we need some tools in our toolbox, okay? First of all, we need to step away from those thoughts with no judgment. No judgment, okay? Hey, I'm experiencing panic right now. That doesn't make me a great person, doesn't make me a horrible person. It is what it is, okay? My body is experiencing an emotion right now. How can we slow that down so that we can actually analyze that thought? When I'm experiencing panic, it happened in the middle of the day, actually, like a week ago. So I have certain triggers that I've learned over time. For you, I'm just going to throw some out that might be for you. It might be a person, like a type of personality that might lend itself towards narcissism, or a personality that maybe you had a previous relationship with that made you feel a certain way. And now when you're around that kind of personality, even if you're not in close relationship with them, it still makes you feel small, makes you feel anxious, makes you feel whatever, okay? And so we need to know our triggers so we can create strategies to either create boundaries around those things or talk to ourselves and quite literally, kind of talk ourselves off that mountain to be able to self-soothe and convince ourselves in that moment that we're okay. All right. So that's why we have to slow down. So think of your thoughts as thoughts and words kind of moving across the screen of your mind. All right. So if those words are moving across the screen of your mind, how do we pick those things out to where we can analyze it? Okay. Think of it as like a menu of a ton of different food options in front of you. And now I'm like, oh, look, a burger. Oh, look, a pickle, my favorite food. Ice cream, my other favorite food, not together. And oh, that's an ice cream shake. That's a Chick-fil-A spicy chicken sandwich. Can I get an amen? That's some fries. Okay. So think of your thoughts as, okay, how can I pull these out? Then I want to analyze these thoughts. Once I've slowed down them enough, okay, not just a bunch of food flying around my face. I've slowed them down enough to read the menu. Now, what's on the menu? Okay, great. Now I'm going to look through it. My husband and I are going on date night right after this. And he's like, babe, I want Thai food. And I'm like, Thai food, we're kind of on this health kick right now. It's a lot of salt. Do you want to be 2 pounds heavier tomorrow, even though you're going to lose it and it's water weight, whatever. We talk about the menu. We talk about, oh, well, does Indian food sound good? Should we cook at home? What's the cost versus the benefit of it? Do we want to spend $100 out on dinner, or do we want to save that money and put it towards a shopping spree or put it towards travel, right? How often are you actually looking at the menu of your mind versus just letting it run rampant and just saying, oh, I'll eat whatever, versus actually having an opinion? How powerful is this? Is this practical for you guys? Okay, so next time your mind is spinning, slow it down and say, what kind of food do I want? What kind of thoughts do I actually want versus what thoughts don't align with my identity? Because you always act out of your identity. You always act out of your identity. Write that down. Say that to yourself. I always act out of my identity. Okay, well then that begs the question, what do I need my identity to look like to act the way that I want to act? Which, if you know the self-coaching model, then produce the results that I want to get and produce the life that I want. Okay? Thoughts become emotions, become actions, become results. We know that, right? You make decisions the same way every single time. It's just whether they're conscious or subconscious decisions. All right? So we slow down. And then the next thing that we do is we scope out. So we say, you guys have all heard the old homage, like, will this matter in 3 weeks? Like maybe you were like punching your brother in the face growing up and you're like, your mom's like, will this matter in 3 weeks? And you're like, yes, it will, Mom, right? But how many of you guys know, like, we do that to ourselves? We convince ourselves of these tiny little things. We forget that emotions pass, circumstances change. And how many of you guys know, or think about it, if you could just accept the fact and put it into your identity that emotions pass and that emotions will not stay forever, what would that do for your life? What would that do for your decision making? What would that do for your marriage? What would that do for your relationship with whoever? What would that do to help you set boundaries? What would that do to help you get over things more quickly or not be so hard on yourself when you are having a moment? Okay? It would change your life. It would change a lot of things. Okay? So slow down. Okay, slow down, look at the menu of your brain, and then put it up against the identity that you want, not the identity that you have right now, and say, is this in alignment or does this need to go in the trash? Is this old yucky leftovers that have been in the fridge for 2 weeks and now they're growing mold? Well, why would you eat mold? Why would you even continue to just stick your face in it and smell it, right? That's dirty. That's yuck. That needs to go in the trash. And you need to have the same level of integrity with your thought life. Okay? Can I get an amen? You need to have the same level of intentionality with your thought life. Okay? Now there's some other things that we can do. Deep breathing, diaphragmatic, I think is the right word. The type of breathing where you do like 4 counts in, hold for 6 at the top, breathe 4 counts out, or it might be 6, 4, 6, I forget. Things like that, of course. Physically distancing yourself, changing rooms. Sometimes if I'm having a panic moment, I will physically need to move my body in a way, change my location, or do something else that kind of shocks me into a new emotion. For me, honestly, what usually gets me out of that is I'll have client calls or I'll have something else that I have to like be on for. And what's crazy is your thoughts, feel like they're going 300 miles an hour. You really need something else to almost take that over for that switch to happen, right? It has to almost be stronger than the 300 mile an hour jet plane that's like raging through your thoughts in that moment. So for me, sometimes actually having something else on the calendar is one of the best things for me because I have no choice, right? But to shift into a different mode. So figure out what would be a healthy version of that for you. What would be a healthy version of what could force you to shift? This is why, honestly, the power of mentorship, right? So like my one-on-one clients have Slack access to me. And if they're having a bad day or if I don't hear from them for a week, I'm like, hey, what's going on? Hey, just checking in. I just did that right before this. I did all my check-ins and I'm like, hey, what's going on? Give me an update, right? And I love audio messaging. I love just like having that connection with people that I love to serve, right? And just to give you guys an update, like in the last week, this has been so cool. My 2 new clients we're on track now. The last 2 clients that we've onboarded have ROI'd in less than a week of working with us for our high ticket program. Like 1 week, you guys. It's just been absolutely amazing, right? which is, over 5 figures that they've made in 1 week. And obviously I can't promise those results for anybody, but getting in the right environment. I was just talking with somebody else right before this, and they're like, man, I just don't have the right people around me to be able to sell high ticket in this capacity and to be able to charge what I know that I want to be worth. I'm like, cool. Well, good thing online exists, right? There's always other options, and a true mentor or the right community for you will always show you mentally your next level, so that you can actually take action at the next level. The breakthrough always comes mentally first, because like I said, you always act out of your identity, okay? So once you can see it in your mind's eye, then you can believe it, and then you can take action on it. But you can't take action on what you can't see with like your spiritual eyes, right? Like your mindset produces your skill set. All right. So I hope that this helped you guys today. This fired me up even. I love these messages because I get to preach to myself too. I'm so proud of you guys. Take action on this today. Find buddies, find community, find safe people in your life that can help you take to the next level. And if you guys are watching this or listening on the Powerhouse Podcast, reminder, go follow Sales Queen Facebook group. Links are below. DM me podcast if you want this information. You're like, I don't know what to click. Then just DM me at Megan Swanson Rhodes on Instagram. And we'll see you guys next week. This is awesome. Have an amazing week. Well, thanks so much for listening to this episode. This is Coach Megan, and I just wanted to say it is 2023 in terms of the next pageant season, and we have so many new things going on at Powerhouse. We have a new brand, we have new logos, we have a new website, we have new resources for you. So make sure that you click the link below. If you are not already part of the Powerhouse Club, figure out how you can save $300 per month and $700 overall by joining the best world-class pageant training in the world that you cannot get anywhere else. Intrigued? Click the link below, and we can't wait to see you in that. Thanks for listening to this episode, and we will see you next week.